improvement. The new powers, apparently, that councillors are going to get, I cannot find them in this bill. There are no new real powers. And in fact, far from giving real powers, all that has happened is we have done the equivalent of what they did in Windscale and changed the name to Sellafield. You're still left with the potential disaster on your doorstep, and all we get is a change from county manager to CEO. You get a change in name, but you don't actually get a change in reality. It is purely tokenism, and even the minister says it himself. It's just about giving it a nicer name. How is that going to help anyone? And apparently the councillors get to choose who this new CEO is. But if they don't, then it goes back to the choosing body, which will keep choosing it and coming back at you until eventually you're forced to take someone that will then decide your fate from then on. No more power will end up with the elected representative. And I can't see what you're afraid of. Well, actually, maybe I can, but from the point of view of developing the country, what are you afraid of? I would suggest what you're afraid of is this. It took you so long to get back into power, and that was one hell of an achievement with who the last few governments were, that once you got into power, the idea of handing any of it away, regardless of what benefit it was to the country, was just too difficult for you to do. So what you're doing is you're consolidating power closer to the centre where ye currently have the most power. And it's not about what's good for the people, it's about what is good for ye. If someone can get me a drink of water, actually.
Please.
Please, sorry. Many people will talk about systems of local government, and they will complain that they're this or that, and generally say there's something wrong with them. And they'll complain about the system of national government, the general population, and say there's something wrong with it. Now, it is difficult to get the perfect system. But no matter what system you have, if people don't participate in that, it's irrelevant. It's a bit like having a Ferrari, something I never want to have or never will have, and complaining that it doesn't work very well, even though you're urinating in the petrol tank. The problem isn't the system there, the problem is what you're putting in it, not the system. And it's from this that I make this call. Next May, we will have local elections. And people can complain all they want about the system of governance that we have. And no matter how flawed what Minister Hogan wants to bring in, it is the system that will be there for the people to use. And what I am doing is, I am calling on people to participate in that system. We know that Minister Burton is doing her damnedest to run people out of the country between the age of 21 and 25. Well, because apparently they're too lazy to get a job, even though there's no jobs there. Well, I made a suggestion during my budget speech, and I'm going to make it here again now, that those people in those age brackets apply for the over 900 jobs that are up for grabs next May. And they put their name on the ballot paper and they participate. And Deputy Harris suggested that, well, you know, it seems to be difficult for younger people to get involved in local government because they need to have 2 jobs. I'm sure that won't put off an awful lot of people who are currently unemployed. So my suggestion is this, that the tens of thousands of young people go out and run in the next local elections. Put your name on the ballot paper. And it isn't that complicated to do it. You need 15 people to sign you up, and those people have to be registered to vote in the electoral area concerned. Alternatively, they could get all of their week's dole, €100, because that's all you're giving them now, because apparently you need less calories when you're in that age group. Don't understand how you come up with it yourselves, but that's my only conclusion. People like to eat less when they're that age. They could get all of their week's money and put it down as a deposit and challenge the political system. Because I know in my heart that the only purpose in this country for local councillors is to canvass for TDs in the run-up to a general election. And each of the Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil councillors will grab about 20 people apiece and go out and beg people for people's votes. And if young people do what I suggest next May, and run for election, and let's say in Roscommon, if they took 10 out of the 18 seats that then would be available, not only would you get a place and a little bit of say in how local government is ran, because you don't have a real say as a councillor, but the real achievement would be this. Come the next general election, you will have got rid of potentially up to 200 canvassers that will go out and knock on the door and say whatever it takes to get people to vote for their sugar daddy who's going to sort them out from national government level, because that is where the power lies. That's what people need to do. And if they do that, there will also be another benefit, because I know Deputy Harris thinks it isn't enough to survive on, but it's also worth about 30,000 to each of those individuals. They can work in their local community, they can work on changing things bit by bit. But the big plus side is you have 10 Fianna Fáilers or Fine Gaelers. We don't have any Labour people in my area, we were always too smart for that. You would then take 300,000 euros in resources from these organisations. And then we get to rebalance politics in this country and get real change, because that is how we will change things. And then, in the run-up to the next general election, those people who have cut the spokes on the political bicycle wheels, they can go out and they can work on getting into Dáil Éireann, where they can change how local government works. Because local government does not work in this country, and it will not work with the way you're trying to change it. We need a system similar to what they have in Switzerland and many other countries around Europe, where even villages with only 100 people have pretty much all the say over how the money is spent. Now, my frustration about the way local government is ran comes from my experience as a county councillor and seeing how money was wasted hand over fist, and how local councillors had pretty much no say in it. Although you did have a say in it if you ignored all the waste, then they do a few things for you. But that really isn't the way it should work. We should have, if elected, have total say over everything that happens. And why not? Why not have confidence in the people that you elect? Because at the moment, your job as a county councillor is ignore the waste, and maybe I might get a few crumbs from the top table, as opposed to point out the waste, and instead of crumbs from the top table, there will be loaves and there will be cake. And that is what there is there until they munch away at it and waste it. One of my first experiences as a county councillor was approaching the executive, asking them, could they open our swimming pool all year round? The people of my area went out with shovels and went out with wheelbarrows and dug out a 33-metre pool in the 1940s. Our town has always had an ambition to have it open all year round. I did up a plan for it, which would have meant for £250,000 at the time, we could have opened it all year round. I was told during my first week as a councillor that we didn't have the money for it. In my second week as a councillor, the car park behind the local area office, which is right across the road from my office, was dug up and retarred at a cost of £110,000. The junction on the Galway Road coming into Castlereagh, which would have had a beautiful peach blossom tree on it, was dug up without asking anyone. They put in a new junction with 2 car spaces in it. Sorry, did I say spaces? 2 cars didn't fit into it, and to this day still don't fit into it. That cost us the guts of another €100,000. There was a footpath put down in the town, which we didn't need because the other footpath was perfect. And guess what? My local authority, which didn't have any money to provide a facility for young people in the town, actually spent more on 3 projects that no one asked for. But more to the point, the elected member locally didn't even know anything about it, was not told about it. Why was it done like that? Now, I set about after that trying to change things and ask maybe we could be informed beforehand and maybe we would have more say on it. Did it happen? No. It was seen as an insult to the executive that you might suggest to them what should be done. So we ended up with a car park that we didn't need. It was grand anyways. We ended up with a junction that didn't work, that looks terrible now in comparison to the way it did. And we ended up with a situation where, far from opening our swimming pool all year round, guess what they did? Last year, as punishment, because people are not meant to point out local authority waste, they closed it for an extra month in the summer, even though the local community put in a plan to open it for longer. And we were told, sorry, you don't have the proper expertise to run it. Even though on our committee we had someone who had a recommendation from the Olympic Committee on Swimming, we had someone who ran 3 credit unions, we had an expert on child welfare on our board, and the council had no one who knew anything about swimming pools, and they concluded that they should run it. So there is no power currently at local level, none whatsoever, and what you're proposing will not change that. And I'm not just saying it just to have a go at the government. I was for getting rid of the Seanad. I had no problem with that. Just because you proposed it, I didn't deliberately go against it. I actually said the Constitutional Convention, flawed and all as it was, well, at least you're doing it anyway, and you're trying. So I'm not coming in here to say, just for the sake of it, I disagree with what you're planning. I am saying I disagree with it because I don't think what you're doing is going to change things. Because while local government, I don't know you're allowed to use this word in here, but local government, it might not be the sexiest thing of all. It probably puts people to sleep when you start talking about it. It doesn't sound very exciting. But at the core of it is the most important thing we can do, and it is the most important policy to get right. How you govern yourself at a local level is so important. And because we're not doing it right at the moment, all the energy of local communities is being wasted. And anyone who has tried has kind of given up. And as a result of it, you see local communities falling apart. Every now and then, whether it be in Castlerea or Boyle or Roscommon Town, you get a development committee that's set up. And really they're set up because there's no local democracy to drive things locally. They set it up, they get together as a committee, all enthusiastic, and then they set about raising a few quid, a pittance in comparison to what's spent locally by local government. They try and work with local government works against them, and bit by bit they get worn down. That shouldn't be the case. If we had a proper local government system, instead of closing down town councils, we would expand it. And instead of getting rid of the very good value councillors, we should have got rid of some of the expensive councillors. Let's say, for example, in Roscommon, what I would suggest is, instead of having 18 county councillors, which we're now going to have, which is way too much for a population of 58,000, what I would suggest is we have 6 county councillors, 1 for each area, pay them a decent wage so they can do it full time, and give them the power to elect a person who takes that CEO position, but takes it with the thumbs up from the people. And then, at local level, that is where you put the numbers and the eyes and ears from the community. And what I would suggest is, instead of closing down Boyle Town Council, what you do is you use the money that you save on getting rid of, as it is now, 20 councillors from Roscommon, or 12 from the number that you're on about, and you put that money into having a Castlerea Town Council, a Roscommon Town Council, a Monksland Town Council, a Ballahadreen Town Council, and you give the power back to the people locally, so that next time a decision, whoever made the decision, a decision is made to rip up a 40-year-old peach blossom tree that looks beautiful and to put in place a junction that doesn't work, the people locally would stop that before it went on. And they would go, do you know what, we have so much to spend here. Will we pull up that footpath that has one crack in it? Will we dig up the junction that already works? Will we dig up the car park because we won't get the money again next year if we don't? No. What we'll do is we'll spend it on the local swimming pool, we create 7 jobs, you make it more likely people come into the town for other things, and you spend the money well. And next time there's a decision as to whether to pull up a footpath or not, the decision wouldn't be made on the basis of, oh, we got the money, we better spend it or we won't get it again next year. The decision will be made on the basis of, do we need it, or should we spend that 80,000 euros on a youth club or something like that? And God love them, they might trip on the footpath on the way to it, but at least there'll be somewhere to go on these footpaths. Because under the current system, guess what? The footpaths are perfect in Castlereagh, but there isn't many places to go, and that is a problem. And instead of doing things like footpaths, which you do over and over and over again without any connection to reality, you could then next year concentrate on setting up a local market so people could sell their produce locally, as opposed to chasing after people who set up a local market and working out how you can close them down. So what you are proposing is not going to change a jot. It will centralise power even more, and ye will be able to continue on doing what you're doing favours for people locally, getting your votes, keeping power centralised, while at the same time we end up back in the Stone Ages when it comes to local government. Why do you think they have so much money in Switzerland? Why do you think they have so much money and they do so well in countries where they have real local government? Because that's the right way to do it. And why are we going to end up broke? Because, well, same old, same old.
Good morning, Dr. And now call Deputy Sean Kenny.
Lascan Corlock. The Local Government Bill 2013 gives legislative effect to the proposals set out in the Action Programme for Effective Local Government, which was published last year and which outlines an overall vision for local government as the primary vehicle for governance and public service at local level in Ireland. The Action Programme sets out government policy for a range of reforms to the local government system, including the structures, functions, funding, operational arrangements and governance designed to strengthen local government.
Sorry, Deputy, sharing with Deputy Maloney.
Yes.
Thank you.
The primary aims of the bill are to provide for the significant reorganisation of local government structures and the strengthening of governance and accountability in local government, with particular emphasis on rebalancing powers between the executive and the elected council. Of particular note is the major rebalancing of powers between the executive and the elected council, with much greater powers granted to the elected council to direct policy, oversee implementation and actively review the actions of local authority management. As a former Dublin City Councillor for over 30 years, I welcome these progressive policy changes. The elected council will also have power of decision over appointments to the new chief executive positions, which under the bill will replace the current city and county managers' positions. It has been said at Lascan that the city and county managers are the most powerful group of unelected officials in the state. The bill contains the following specific provisions related to the management and governance of local authorities. The post of city and county manager will be replaced by a post of chief executive, providing more explicit statutory expression of the duty of the chief executive to assist the formation of policy by the elected council, to comply with that policy, to support its implementation and to account for action in that regard, as well as strengthening provisions for the elected members to oversee the actions of the chief executive in implementing policy decided by the elected council. Also included is a provision that will allow the elected members to decide on the appointment as chief executive of the person recommended by the Public Appointments Service on foot of the selection process for that post. Other provisions to strengthen the local government oversight, including expansion of the role and remit of local authority strategic policy committees, the establishment of a national oversight and audit commission, and changes to local authority audit arrangements, and the amendment of Section 140 of the Local Government Act 2001, which gives members the power to direct the manager to make a decision. The recent European Commission call upon Dublin City Council to terminate a contract for client services and public relations at the Poolbeg incinerator, in which spending overran by more than 20 million, is very apt to this bill. The Section 140 motions will no longer apply to planning functions. This is in line with the recommendation of the Mahon Tribunal. And in relation to the Mahon Tribunal, there is a number of outstanding remaining issues which I believe are relevant to this bill and which I want to raise. When the Mahon report was debated in the Dáil last year, the debate did not include the Carrick Mines module because of the pending court cases at that particular time. That court case collapsed last summer when the main witness became ill, and I believe that it would now be proper that the Carrick Mines module should now be fully debated in this House following the publication of that chapter of the report last summer. I believe also that the Dáil should have a full debate on the entire Mahon report as a result of the collapse of the court cases against one sitting and 3 former Dublin County councillors who were involved in rezonings. And I would ask the Minister if he can arrange to have that debate. Also, in relation to the Mahon report and in relation to the making of city and county development plans, councils must guard against creating another property bubble in the future. We see at the moment house prices rising in the Dublin area again due to a housing shortage. And I think care must be taken by planning authorities not to take action which would spawn another property bubble. Part 10 of the bill provides for the arrangements in relation to the holding of a plebiscite to consider future local governance arrangements for the Dublin metropolitan area, including options for the introduction of a directly elected mayor. As a former Lord Mayor of Dublin, I welcome this initiative. Following a request from the Minister, the Lord Mayor of the City of Dublin shall convene a forum representative of elected members of the 4 Dublin local authorities to discuss the establishment of an office of a directly elected mayor for the Dublin metropolitan area. Subsequent to its discussions, the forum shall submit a written report, including a draft resolution containing its deliberations and conclusions, to the Minister. Once the Minister is satisfied with the resolution and the supporting statement, it can be put before each of the Dublin local authorities. The resolution shall provide for the holding of a plebiscite on whether the office of directly elected Lord Mayor should be established for the Dublin metropolitan area. The resolution and statement should also include details of the future functions, structures and governance for the Dublin metropolitan area, the changes that would arise in relation to the local authorities and in relation to the functions of other bodies, their relationship with the office of a directly elected mayor, the costs and resource implications, advantages and disadvantages arising from that, and measures to maximise efficiency and accountability and to avoid duplication across the local authorities. All 4 Dublin local authorities must adopt the resolution no later than the 31st of March 2014 on the basis of an absolute majority in each local authority to enable the plebiscite to go ahead. Where the resolution is adopted, a plebiscite may be held to provide for the establishment of the office of a directly Lord Mayor and other such matters in relation to local government in the Dublin area as the Minister considers appropriate. The plebiscite shall be held in tandem with the 2014 local government elections. This section also provides for the making of regulations setting up the arrangements for holding the plebiscite, including provision of information to the electorate. Section 63 provides that should the plebiscite be passed, the Minister shall, within 2 years of the date of the plebiscite, submit to both houses of the Oireachtas a report either setting out proposals for the legislation for the establishment of the office of a directly elected Lord Mayor, or containing a statement of the Minister's reasons for not making a proposal for legislation in that regard. I commend the bill.
The Eamon Maloney. 10 minutes.
Firstly, can I just welcome the bill? We've inherited a local government system that from the British, which is in some ways good, and there are positive things in it. But time changes everything, and it's a progressive thing that this Minister and his department have examined the whole nature of local authority and how it operates in this jurisdiction. And in this very comprehensive bill, they have highlighted a wide variety of issues which deserve to be scrutinised. As I said, when time passes, there's no reason why we don't change things which do not work properly or belong to another age. That's a good thing, and I support that. So I want to compliment the Minister himself and his staff in that. I know that some of there've been some concern from some of the members about the decline in the number of councillors, but given that I'm on record during the Shannon referendum as saying that there are too many politicians, I have to be consistent. That remains my position. Be consistent and also say that as a former councillor for a period of 12 years, there were too many councillors also. And I'm in no doubt about that. The volume of time wasted at council business, where you have some cases 30 or more members present, all saying the same thing, or maybe a slight variation. Dealing with matters that could be dealt with in 10 minutes. And I witnessed this for 12 years, and I just always thought it was the most backward sort of system which should be scrutinised in terms of its efficiency. So I welcome that part of it, and as I said, I think actually as politicians, and I include councillors, I think sometimes we work against ourselves, particularly in the field of being a local councillor. Some people, I know from my own time in South Dublin County Council, second largest local authority in the country, that people would refer, councillors would always refer to the workload they have, etc. But I think we should be honest with each other and just admit that, look, being a councillor, whether it's a city councillor or a county councillor, it is not a full-time job. And I think trying to delude ourselves and trying to mislead the public by saying that it's a full-time job and that it takes up all of your time and that you can't see love hate on the telly, and you can't do this because you're a full-time councillor. It's a load of old rubbish, you know. If you can push it into a few days. Most of us, and I include myself, I worked full-time during the 12 years I was a councillor. I had a real job, as I always like to say, and you squeeze into that, and I'm not the only one. Other people here, I'm sure the members here present did exactly the same thing, but I think we should just be honest when we're dealing with the public and say that, look, being a member of local authority is not a full-time job, you know, and I think it would be helpful if we did that. To move on into those of us who are elected to this Parliament, that I always think that one of the pitfalls of our political system, which again we inherited, but we didn't take all of it, of course, is that, of course, all of us here present, the four of us, I'm quite sure that the other deputies are no different than I am. 80%, if not more, of your time is taken up with council business. So it's so unlike any of the other parliaments, and I'm not for years. I'm only here a short time, but for years past, I've never agreed with the PR system. I agree with the British system, single-seat constituencies. We should have more constituencies and less politicians. Single-seat constituencies, people like ourselves will focus on one thing, and that's legislation, law, and changing law, improving society. We shouldn't be spending 80% of our time worrying about planting of trees and autumn leaves and footpaths and things. I don't think that's what people, I don't think that's what the electorate really intend when they go out to vote into a government. In relation to the, just go back to the bill itself, Minister, as I said at the beginning, it's a very comprehensive bill. You know, there's just so much in it that you be here for half the day to comment on all of the sections. But can I just, to conclude, can I just refer to the sections 50 to 65? It was referred just earlier by my colleague, Deputy Sean Kenny, and that is the plebiscite for the 4 local authorities, which will take place in May during the local elections. In principle, I have no objection to that whatsoever. You know, it'd be interesting what the outcome of it will be. But I want to make this point in relation to the plebiscite itself. I've heard other members since this debate started. I've heard other deputies complain and protest about the abolition or the abolition of some local authorities, some councils, etc. But the town that I live in, we have no problem with our council being abolished, despite the fact that the town that I live in is the third largest centre of population. There's 100,000 of us living there. So I'm not coming in to complain about the local authority being abolished. We never had one, despite the fact that we're the third largest centre of population. I'm referring to Tallaght, third largest centre of population. Not only does it have a greater population than Galway, Kilkenny, Waterford, Limerick, our population in some cases twice what the other cities are. And the local authority that, as I said the local authority which I was a member of, South Dublin County Council, in 2003 adopted a motion, a policy that, because it's the third largest centre of population, that city status should be granted to Tallaght. It should be recognised as a city, because effectively that's what it is. It's not just a matter of having that very large population. It functions in every way except in name as a city, whether it's in terms of education, with sporting facilities, the Chamber of Commerce, all of these things, the Tallaght Institute of Technology, all of these things, but it's never been granted city status. In fact, historically, there is no Irish cities, and I include Dublin. Every location, the five of them, they exist as cities. In the first case, because the Vikings decided so. And the second case, because the British monarchy granted city status to the five of them. So there is no such thing as an Irish city, or as I was discussing this with the question of city status for Tallaght with the Minister himself, Mr. Hogan, but and I made the point to him that we had approached previous Minister for Local Government and previous administrations and made no progress with this. But I did say to him that he would be the first Irish citizen to grant city status to any large town in this jurisdiction ever, because as I said previous, the rest of them were granted due to the generosity of Victoria, and I think back to Charles I. So, the reality is that we have a very large urban centre, and whilst I sympathise with, as I've said, those whose local town council or whatever has been abolished under this bill, that we've never had a town or city council. We want to have one. And how this bill, and I've made this point to the Minister, if a plebiscite is to take place, and of course no doubt it will, where does it leave the third largest centre of population, and where does it leave the existing policy of the second largest local authority, South Dublin County Council, whose policy is that Tallaght should be granted city status? Making the point that, again, just go back to it, that it's not just a simple matter of the Minister, irrespective of what the outcome of the plebiscite is, that it's not just a matter of the population size, it's not just there are other factors in it, some of them which I've outlined, but I just want to reiterate the point to you, Minister, and particularly to Minister Hogan, that it is the policy of the local authority, and we want that to be considered in the period after the plebiscite, if not before. Thank you.
Now call Deputy Thomas Pringle. We'll be sharing with Thomas Fleming.
Thanks a lot, John Corley. I think I would be sharing with Deputy Fleming 10 minutes each. John Corley, if I may, just before I go into the body of the discussions in relation to the local government bill, I would like to just suggest to Deputy Maloney that maybe he should read the Library Service Insight into Localism in Politics, which was published a couple of years ago, which actually contains very interesting information about single-seat constituencies and the amount of time that British MPs spend working on local issues, which is actually more than TDs do. And a survey that was done in 2002 before this even became into such focus. So I would say that the figures are probably more accurate, because I'm sure all TDs would be very wary now of saying that they spend any time on local issues, given the public perception of clientelism and parish pump politics, and the perception in Dublin that because you're from a rural area that you're only interested in parish pump and that as well. So I think it would be a very worthwhile read for you, Deputy Maloney, and it would shed some light on some of those figures. And I certainly would say that in my own case, I don't spend 80% of my time dealing with local authority issues. That's certainly the case. Just in relation to the local government bill, I think that this bill doesn't represent any reform. I think it's a measure to reduce costs in the long run and to increase indirectly costs on people in local council areas, and I think that's the real purpose of this bill. If we were talking about political reform, we would be looking at models of where local authorities work and where local representation actually does work. And right across Europe, there's very well formed formats of local government in every country in Europe. I mean, if we look at in France, there's 1,500 people per average in a local government unit. And in Denmark and the Scandinavian countries, they have very effective local government. And the difference is that they have local government that has real powers. They have local government that has the ability to raise funding at a local level. And then for example, in Denmark, I think 30% of taxation actually goes into local authorities. And local authorities decide on the spending of that. And that's why I think that this bill has nothing to do with reform. It doesn't provide any reform, and the only reform it does provide is going in the wrong direction. Because what we should be doing is developing a local government system, and I would argue even that we should go down to the level of parish as a basic unit that makes up the state, and have real local representative democracy at parish level, leading into what you call municipal areas or electoral areas as they are under the current Local Government Act, leading into local authorities, leading up to national government. And then we might have some real change and some real reform take place in our state. And I think that'll be probably one of the big legacies and the failures, that there was no attempt at real reform by any government in relation to local authorities. Because what this bill will do, it'll just continue the exact same system that we have now at the moment, where the manager has all the power and where the councillors are in effect the opposition. Except you get the charade that I saw in Donegal County Council for 12 years, where the largest party, most of the time it was Fianna Fáil, had this charade of making it look like that they were in control of the council. And all it was that they were cozying up to the manager to get their pet projects dealt with by the manager, and making it look like that they were providing for the smooth running of the council, when in effect councillors have no say. The county manager actually directs the policy, he directs the finances, and he directs the total operation of local government. If we were really reforming local government, even at the limited level that we have in this country, what we should be doing is bringing direct political accountability to local authorities, and let it operate along the same system, even dysfunctionally as this stall is, but it would bring real accountability if we had a political majority in local authorities that actually controlled the local authorities and work in tandem with the management and have political accountability there, rather than have the charade that we have in every local authority in the country as it is at the moment. And that I think would contribute to bringing some change and bringing some real differences. But to enable you to do that, you would also have to allow local authorities to have the ability to actually raise some funding in their own areas, or make a portion of the national tax take available to them, that they have real discretion in spending, and that they can devise policies and spending spending policies for the benefit, as they see it, of their counties. Of course, you would have to have oversight and you'd have to have audit to make sure that money was being spent properly and people were being held to account. And local authorities and local politicians were being held to account too if they were misspending the money or not directing funding towards areas in greatest need. But that would be real change, and that would be real accountability that we could see. But we're not getting this in this Act. Basically, we're getting changing the name of a county manager to a CEO, which won't make any real difference to the operation of his functions. We're seeing tinkering around the edges of abolition of the town councils, which I think is a retrograde step. Now, obviously, a lot of the town councils and town commissioners, particularly town commissioners, didn't have any power, so that you would have to question how they functioned or whether they function now at all. But if we had real local government reform, those units could have real local powers and be able to deliver local services into their areas. But we're not getting this in this Act. I think there is one thing I would agree with probably in the Act, and that is the abolition of the Section 140 in planning matters, because I think that is worthwhile, because I saw it in my time in Donegal County Council that it was basically on who you had political sway with, whether you got to a Section 140 or a Section 4, as it was known as for the first few years. And it was about who your politician friend was, whether you got your planning or not about whether it was in the interest of the county or the county development. And there was many people who had just the same circumstances who, if you used the rationale for putting forward a Section 140, they would all have been entitled to them as well. So I think that is worthwhile that that's removed, and it makes perfect sense. I think the bill provides as well for a system where 50% of the rates would be payable on empty buildings. And I know in the current climate that will have a huge impact, particularly in Donegal and I'd say in all rural counties, where many of our towns and villages have huge numbers of vacant commercial buildings because of the downturn and because of the crisis that we've had. But what this will do is make them have to pay 50% of the rate that is levied on them, and I think that will only put people into even more difficulty. But what it is, it's a backdoor way of raising additional taxes on local authorities and giving extra funding to local authorities, which every cent that will be raised from it will be taken away from national government. And so this is what the impact is going to have of this bill, and I think that's going to be a very retrograde step. I think overall this legislation, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time here in the Dáil to be debating it, because it doesn't give any reform. It doesn't give any change. It will make no difference to local authorities across the country, except increase numbers. In Donegal will increase by an extra 8 councillors in Donegal. That's the only difference it's going to make, and abolishing the town councils. So it's not going to make any real difference to the lives of Irish citizens. It's not going to make any real difference to the accountability of local authorities. And it's not going to provide any political accountability and any real way where people vote when they vote for councillors is going to have any difference on the policy of the council or the shape of the council or the direction that it goes. So I think from that point of view, this bill is an opportunity lost. And it's just a pity that we don't see real reform. And unfortunately, we've seen this government's idea of reform as being the abolition of the Seanad and tinkering at the edges in relation to the Dáil, while maintaining their stranglehold of control of the executive has on the Dáil. And they're going to maintain the stranglehold that central government has on local authorities into the future as well. So I think overall this is an opportunity lost, and it's a shame that we couldn't see real reform that would deliver real local government rather than this bill. Thank you.
And now the next speaker is Deputy Mary Mitchell O'Connor.
Thank you.
Deputy sharing with Deputy.
I'll ask Can Corla. Local government reform has had a long and thorny history in Ireland, and as it stands, the system is not serving its communities adequately. It remains only a reflection of an ambitious system that has not lived up to expectations since it was originally designed. It no longer remains efficient or relevant to modern Ireland. I believe that reforming this system is overdue. Local government must serve its communities. Local knowledge is essential in dealing with local issues. Instead, local government has become a cumbersome system making little tangible differences to local communities. As we are all too aware, Minister, Ireland can ill afford a bloated structure hamstrung by inefficiency. As it exists, our local government system has become a shell, limited in revenue-raising powers, in accountability and in self-reliance. We have seen a trend where the funding and responsibilities of government are being progressively centralised in Dublin. Real power would mean having a meaningful role in local budgets or issues. I welcome a bill that proposes reforming this system. However, I must admit disappointment that Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown Council will only be getting 65% of its property tax take for the year 2014. The Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council is one of the few councils that is not in debt. I understand that during these difficult economic times, we must all play a part. However, I question why Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown residents must carry more than their share of the economic burden compared to other county councils who have overspent and who have not been as vigilant with their budgets. The second proposal of the bill that I have some concerns with is the introduction of a Mayor of Dublin. Similar to the position in the UK, a directly elected mayor should be a political figure in her or his own right. This position cannot be merely ceremonial. It must be an effective position. I believe that if we introduce a directly elected mayor to Dublin, then that mayor would have to be mindful and sensitive to all the needs of the greater Dublin area. While this mayor would be advised by the 4 local representatives of Dublin, the office must represent all the diversity Dublin has to offer. The mayor would have a responsibility for all the environs of Dublin, from Tallaght to Dún Laoghaire, not just the city proper. However, I would be concerned that such a powerful figure could have the ability to override local initiatives. Dún Laoghaire has been making great progress in tourism, in cruise tourism, and promoting an international diaspora centre. Our villages and towns are fighting back, having endured difficult times. And I am worried that the Dún Laoghaire agenda would be sacrificed for the sake of other initiatives for Dublin city centre. We must be vigilant that each Dublin local area is championed with equal measure. Regard must be given to the fact that Dún Laoghaire residents would be contributing significant revenue through high property tax, and their voices needs to be heard. Our small business associations are supported by Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council, and if it continues to take a 65% tax take, or send back of a 65% tax take, then our council and our residents will suffer. I believe that we need a local government that can serve its communities. And in order to do this, we need a system that is relevant to the needs of modern Ireland. This cannot be achieved without reforming the system. Thank you.
Deputy Michael Conaghan.
A time of proposed change in local government is a good time to reflect in general on the workings of local government, its status, its strengths, its weaknesses, and indeed its place in Irish political culture and in Irish life generally. Of course, understanding local government and its values and its merits in Ireland is not helped, I think, by the opinions and the views of some sectors of Irish society. I'm referring in particular to certain journalists, certain statutory bodies like the ESRI, and some academics who write on the topic of local government. many individuals in these spheres of life, in trying to understand local government, limit themselves to reading and publishing and commenting from formal documents, like, for example, various local government acts that were passed 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, and reading books on local government. Such an approach to uncovering and discovering what local government really is all about has very limited value and is a very poor guide to the operation of local government in practice. And indeed, to really understand how local government actually works and how valuable it is in improving the life of local communities, rather than reading academic reports, you would be much better off to study how an effective councillor operates locally. That would be a much better pursuit for these academics than searching through academic tomes and volumes or various reports that are so detached from the real world in which most people live. So let's take an imaginary city councillor or county councillor, city councillor, let's say, standing at his or her hall door. They look up and down their street or their road, and everything they see is within the ambit of local government. They look at the footpaths and they check, are the surfaces smooth, are they trip-free? They look at the road surfaces, the street surfaces, are they broken or potholed, etc. They look at the trees, are trees missing or broken? They look at street lighting, etc. And they check if all these things are fit for purpose. And if not, he or she can do something about it. Rectify them, repair them, replace them, etc. Let's say then our imaginary city councillor leaves their front door and walks up to their local park. Is the park safe? Is it pleasant? Is it clean? Is there a playground? Are the trees and flower areas being maintained? Are the football pitches grassed and marked? Is there a good enclosed five-a-side pitch? Or the council proceeds up to the local shopping area and again checks, is the public realm pleasing to the eye? Is it attractively laid out? Is parking available and accessible? Again, a case of significant community facilities in which the local councillor has a key role in providing for and maintaining. Or they can go into their local library and see if it's properly stocked with books and all the other facilities that local libraries now provide for, or the swimming pool, or the new art centre. The fact is, what makes communities work and what makes places into communities is to a huge extent the outcome of local government. And in the case of each and every one of these facilities and services, the role of the City Council is uppermost, and the role of the local councillor working with his or her community and with the local managers is at the centre of that endeavour. And when we look at more recent new community structures like the local employment services, the partnerships, the drugs task forces, again the role of the council and the councillor has been critical to the success of these initiatives. All of this activity, all of this provision is linked to and locked in to the role of the council, within which councillors play a critical part, working alongside their managers and liaising with their managers. I was 20 years Lascan Coyle on the Dublin City Council, and I just want to say a little bit about this notion of power and influence. In that time, no city manager in over 20 years ever said to me, "You don't have the power," or "You don't have the place to make such a request for such a thing in my community, or to ask for such a thing to be done." I never heard a city manager or the local area managers talk in that kind of language. Not having formally stated power doesn't really come into it. It's not really power that counts. It's more influence that counts. It's influence rather than power that makes Irish local government work for the councillor and for the community he represents. And indeed, the managers are on the same mission as the councillor, and that mission to uplift and improve communities. That is their common concern. One cannot operate without the other. They have shared objectives. They have one common enemy, though, not identifying who has power or influence, or have you more of it than I have it. The one common enemy they do have is lack of money, not who has the power. And I thought, Laskin Coyle, that at a time when we're thinking about change, that we reflect on what we already have, and perhaps rather than condemning it, that we see considerable merit in it, rather than, abandoning whole segments of the local government provision as it currently stands. Thank you, Laskin Coyle.
Before I call the Minister, I have a message from the Select Committee. The Select Subcommittee on Public Expenditure and Reform has completed its consideration of the Freedom of Information Bill 2013 and has made amendments thereto. I now call the Minister of State to respond.
I concur that the matters that have been raised in this debate have been noted. I would like to thank the deputies who made contributions on the second stage of this bill, and members generally for their attendance over the course of the debate. It's important that a major legislative provision like this, which is at all about strengthening the democratic process, should have the fullest and possible consideration by elected representatives. Local government reform has been the subject of extensive debate and numerous studies, reports and policy documents over many years, from the Green Paper on local government through the Local Government Efficiency Review, and in the context of the alignment of community and local development. Following the publication last year of the Reform Action Programme, a specific structural process was put in place to engage the local authority members, associations in the local government reform implementation process. On behalf of my colleague Minister Hogan, I would like to record appreciation for the positive engagement on the part of the members' associations, which has helped to inform the provisions that have been included in this bill. I would now like to address some of the important points raised by deputies during the course of this debate. The dissolution of town councils. It has been suggested that the dissolution of town councils is anti-democratic, or in some way it takes local government further away from the communities it is supposed to serve. Despite the good work undertaken by some town councils, the 19th century model that some want to hold on to is not a good model of democratic representation, with town councillors accounting for 46% of all councillors, but representing only 14% of the population. The 40% have double representation at both town council and city or county level, while people outside of those areas have no sub-county representation, and this is true even for some very large populated centres which have grown up in recent years. The lack of equity in representation is also a feature at county level, as the recent report of the local electoral area boundary commission found, with counties like Leitrim having one councillor per 1,445 population, while in Dublin, some authorities, the figure is one councillor to over 10,000 population. The bill will reduce these inequities very substantially. As well as the inequitable representation, the existing town and county council system gives rise to much duplication of functions and other distortions. An example of this duplication is the fact that in Tipperary, with a population of just over 160,000, there are currently 9 local authorities involving 9 sets of elections, 9 annual budgets, 9 sets of commercial rates, 9 annual audits and 9 annual reports, and 9 corporate plans and 9 development plans. These 9 authorities also engage in other duplicate political administrative processes, not least through a network of committees and subsidiary bodies. This will be replaced by a unified local authority structure with 5 municipal districts all working in harmony to the welfare of the community. This situation exists to varying degrees across the country, placing unwarranted demands on limited resources. It is clear that the current arrangements cannot continue. On behalf of this government, I am grateful for the support of colleagues from all sides of the House on this point. While on the subject of Tipperary, I am glad to report to the House that Minister Hogan has just signed orders to give effect to a single management structure across North and South Tipperary County Councils, with Mr Joe McGrath having dual responsibility. This will enable the full integration of management and structures and staff units to proceed in preparation for the full merger in mid-2014. The mergers in Limerick, Tipperary and Waterford, which have been proceeding at a practical level, are a key element in the strengthening of local government structures under the bill. This government is also anxious to ensure that, to reassure colleagues that, like Deputy Stanley, that this reform programme is not